150, 170, 182.35.
Many people are crazy about Gold Rush, watching Parker Schnbal pull staggering amounts of gold from the earth. What many overlooked, however, are the faces that have slowly disappeared from his side.
Can't have lunch? What are you talking about, I'll take one coffee break in my lunch, And if that's a no-no, well, then maybe I shouldn't be here anyways.
The cost of mining millions of dollars in gold isn't just measured in fuel and equipment, it's measured in people. The relentless pressure has created a revolving door for some of his most vital crew members. First Chris left, then Mitch was gone. The story of who left and why reveals the hidden truth behind Parker's incredible success and raises the question of what's coming next. The boy king of the Klondike. To put it mildly, Parker Schnbal was born into a gold mining legacy. His grandfather, John Schnbal, was a Klondike legend, a man who staked his claim and worked the land with an old-school grit that is the stuff of folklore.
Parker has been extremely successful to accomplish what he's done. I'm proud of him.
When Parker took over the family business at the tender age of 16, many saw it as a kid playing in a sandbox. They couldn't have been more wrong. With a drive that bordered on obsession, Parker didn't just continue his grandfather's legacy, he supercharged it, turning a small-scale operation into a colossal, earth-moving enterprise that would rewrite the record books. You see, by his mid-20s, he had mined well over $50 million in gold, a truly mind-boggling achievement.
Let's see how much we got here. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120.
No way.
140. 185.15.
That's not a bad run.
What many overlooked in the shine of all that gold was the immense pressure that came with it. Parker wasn't just a miner, he was a boss, responsible for a multi-million-dollar budget and the livelihoods of a dozen crew members, many of whom were old enough to be his father. The most shocking fact is the sheer scale of his operation. At his peak, he was leasing thousands of acres of land, and his weekly expenses for fuel, parts, and payroll could easily top $100,000. Every single minute the machines weren't running, he was losing money. This reality forged Parker into a demanding, hard-driving leader who pushed his crew, his equipment, and himself to the absolute limit, 7 days a week, for months on end. This intense environment wasn't for everyone. Early on, the cracks began to show. Viewers might remember Jeremy LeBlanc, a mechanic who lasted just 1 day before quitting, unable to handle the relentless pace.
Jeremy is a perfect example of a guy just like, how did I not weed that one out? He was from a city and just couldn't deal with it. He just had no idea what was going on up there.
Then there was Denis Savigny, a more experienced operator whose disruptive behavior and clashes with the team led to him being fired.
Things just aren't working out. We just need a little faster pace here. I hope you understand that.
These were early warning signs. While Parker was building a reputation as a gold-finding prodigy, he was also developing a reputation as a boss who was incredibly difficult to work for. The thing nobody tells you is that in the Klondike, your crew is your lifeline. The isolation is extreme, the work is brutal, and the season is short. A breakdown, either mechanical or personal, can cost you a fortune. Parker's success was built on the backs of a few key, loyal veterans who could handle his intensity, but that loyalty was about to be tested like never before. He was asking his team to move mountains, and for a while they did. But every person has a breaking point. A crew divided. For years, the foundation of Parker's crew was a man named Chris Dumit. Chris wasn't just a skilled operator, he was the heart and soul of the team. A veteran miner with a calm demeanor and a quick smile, he was the father figure in a group of young, hard-charging miners. He had been with Parker since the early days, a steady hand and a voice of reason. What many overlooked was that Chris did more than just run the gold room. He managed the crew's morale. He was the guy who could calm Parker down and the one who kept the team together through the grueling 16-hour days. His departure was, to put it mildly, a seismic shock to the operation. You see, Chris didn't just quit. He left to go work for Rick Ness, Parker's former foreman who had started his own rival mining operation. This wasn't just a business move, it felt like a betrayal. For fans, it was unimaginable. Chris and Parker were a team, but the relentless pressure and the changing dynamics of the crew had taken their toll.
Everything has to be cleaned in the gold room. I can't do that. I just can't. Why have a third plant if you can't keep it clean?
Chris was looking for a different pace, a work environment with less constant, high-stakes stress. His exit left a massive hole in Parker's operation, not just in terms of skill, but in terms of leadership and stability. The man who had been Parker's rock since he was a teenager was now working for the competition. As if losing Chris wasn't enough, another pillar of the crew was about to crumble. Mitch Blaschke was Parker's mechanical genius. In the remote Yukon, where a broken machine can shut down an entire operation for days, a good mechanic isn't just important, they are everything. Mitch was one of the best. He could fix anything, often using nothing more than scrap parts and sheer ingenuity.
We didn't have all the right fittings to build a whole new hose, so what I did is splice this one and put one section of new hose on there, so it should be enough to get it back up and running.
He was the guy who kept the wash plant, Big Red, running and the one who could diagnose a problem with a dozer just by the sound of its engine. The most shocking fact is how much Parker depended on him. Mitch was on call 24/7, responsible for a fleet of aging multi-million-dollar equipment that was constantly being pushed to its breaking point. After years of this relentless grind, Mitch announced he was leaving. There was no big fight, no dramatic blow-up. It was a quiet exit driven by pure burnout. The endless seasons of mud, grease, and stress had finally caught up with him. He wanted a life outside of the mine, time with his family that the Yukon simply couldn't offer. For Parker, this was another devastating blow. He had lost his emotional anchor in Chris, and now he was losing his mechanical backbone in Mitch. The two men who had been instrumental in his rise to the top were gone. The Golden Empire was suddenly looking incredibly vulnerable. With two cornerstones of his crew gone, Parker was forced to look back at a painful pattern. The ghost of Big Nugget. The departure of Chris and Mitch was a painful echo of a crisis that had rocked Parker's crew years earlier. Before Rick Ness was his right-hand man, Parker relied on the expertise of a seasoned mining veteran named Gene Cheeseman. Gene was a legend in his own right, a tough, no-nonsense foreman who knew how to move dirt and find gold.
I want to put the plant away right. I don't want to do like we did last year, get to the goal and then run off. You know, we got a lot of work to do to get this equipment. So next spring, when you come and start, you're not trying to do it all.
Right.
I want to do it right. Just trying to finish everything right. I just think Parker and I have different ideas and philosophies on how to do things. You know, we have totally different ideas on how to treat a crew and how to manage equipment and manage people.
When Parker hired him, it was a major coup. He brought a level of experience and authority that the young crew desperately needed. For a while, the partnership worked wonders. They moved record amounts of dirt and had their most profitable seasons to date. But not all things are what they seem. Under the surface, a power struggle was brewing.
I'd rather not find out about your schedule by looking at the calendar in Ed's office. You know, shoot me an email with what you're thinking.
Well, I told you that I was going to be around that time.
Right, I'd rather just shoot me an email.
Well, I didn't.
Let me know before
I told you that.
I'm finding out everything by going in Ed's office.
I told you, Parker, there's no secret. I told you before we left that we'd see how things went between the 15th and the 20th.
Right, and I just would rather you shoot me an email about it.
Okay, well, we talked about that, so.
Yeah, you know, a lot of tail wagging the dog around here.
Parker, despite his youth, was the boss. He was the one taking the financial risks and making the final calls. Gene, with his decades of experience, often disagreed with Parker's aggressive, high-risk strategies. What started as professional disagreement slowly grew into open frustration. Gene felt his experience was being ignored, while Parker felt his authority as the boss was being challenged. The tension was visible on screen, with the two men frequently clashing over decisions on the mine site. The thing nobody tells you is that in the high-pressure cooker of the Klondike, respect is everything. Gene felt he wasn't getting the respect his experience warranted from his young boss. The constant arguments and the feeling of being undermined finally reached a boiling point.
I'm done with Parker. I'm not coming back next year.
This morning, he gave me a phone call that he's wants to move on and doesn't think he's going to come back and next season. And that's hit me pretty hard. He's my mentor.
Gene Cheeseman quit, leaving Parker without a foreman in the middle of a crucial season. His departure was the first major crack in Parker's management style. It proved that even incredible success and huge gold totals couldn't keep a top-tier crew member if they felt disrespected. Many people are crazy about Parker's results, but they often don't see the human cost. The loss of Gene was a hard lesson, but the later departures of Chris and Mitch raised a difficult question. Had Parker really learned from it? Was he doomed to repeat the same mistakes, pushing away his most valuable people in his relentless pursuit of more gold? The ghost of Gene Cheeseman's exit loomed large over the mine, a reminder that an empire is only as strong as the people who hold it up. Losing legends could break a man, but Parker had a choice: fold or rebuild from the ground up. Forging a new crew. Faced with the departure of some of his most trusted and experienced crew members, Parker Schnbal found himself at a crossroads. He could have scaled back his operation, admitting that the pressure was too much. Instead, he did what he has always done. He doubled down. To put it mildly, Parker's response to the crisis was to prove that his empire was not built on any single person, but on his own unbreakable will to succeed. The departures, while painful, forced an evolution. Parker, the boy wonder, had to become Parker, the seasoned leader. The question that hangs over the Klondike is no longer just about gold. It's about the very soul of his operation. You see, the exodus was brutal. It wasn't just one person leaving, it was a systematic dismantling of his inner circle. First, there was the legendary foreman Gene Cheeseman, a grizzled veteran whose old-school knowledge was irreplaceable. He left out of sheer frustration with Parker's relentless, borderline reckless management style. Then there was Rick Ness, Parker's long-suffering right-hand man.
It's not that I don't like it that he shows up down here, it's that he always overlooks great progress to try to tear you down. Nobody wants to bust their ass and be hassled for it.
Who didn't just quit, he became a direct competitor, launching his own mining operation and turning their professional relationship into a bitter rivalry. And finally, the two blows that hit the hardest: the departure of Mitch, the mechanical genius who could practically heal machines with his bare hands, and Chris, the quiet, steadfast foreman who was the moral compass of the entire crew. What many overlooked was that these weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a deeper problem. Rumors began to swirl that Parker's insatiable ambition had created a burnout culture, a place where loyalty was ground down by the constant demand for more. Was he building a gold mining empire or a high-stakes revolving door? Instead of backing down, Parker went on the offensive. He began to aggressively invest in a new generation of miners. He brought in fresh faces, young and hungry guys who were not just willing to match his intense work ethic, but who saw him as a living legend.
I guess I got pretty lucky that my passion's heavy equipment and I get to sit in these amazing toys all day long. Gold? Well, that's just like an extra bonus.
This subtly shifted the entire dynamic of the crew. He was no longer the young kid trying to prove himself to older, more experienced men. He was now the established king training his new court. He also had to fundamentally change his own role. With Mitch gone, the most shocking fact is that Parker himself had to become the lead mechanic. He was forced to spend more time covered in grease with a wrench in his hand, personally diagnosing complex hydraulic failures in the middle of a freezing night, a burden that Mitch had always shouldered for him. The key to keeping this new crew together was a revamped deal. The work would be more brutal than ever, the hours longer, but the reward, a share of the gold, would be truly life-changing. The most controversial wild theory whispered around the Yukon is that Parker was forced to change his entire business model. He allegedly abandoned the old system of salaries and small bonuses and began offering his key people significant cuts of the profits. making them partners rather than just employees. This move, potentially costing him millions up front, was a desperate gamble to buy the loyalty he could no longer command through friendship alone. He needed people who were invested in the outcome, not just the paycheck. What many fail to realize is that despite the high-profile exits, a core of dedicated people remained. There were always unsung heroes in the background, the rock truck drivers, the dozer operators, the camp hands who put in the grueling work year after year without the television glory. These are the people who truly kept the gears of the operation turning. And Parker's success didn't just continue, it accelerated. He kept breaking his own records, pulling in staggering amounts of gold worth tens of millions of dollars. He proved that his system and his own almost supernatural ability to read the ground, a skill passed down from his grandfather, John Schnbal, was the true foundation of his success. The most shocking fact, however, is how he managed to increase his gold totals with a less experienced crew. Insiders suggest that after the departures, Parker made a massive multi-million-dollar investment in cutting-edge prospecting technology. We're talking about advanced ground-penetrating radar and sophisticated water analysis techniques that gave him an almost unfair advantage. He wasn't just mining smarter, he was mining with a technological edge his rivals couldn't hope to match, turning the gamble of the Klondike into a calculated scientific extraction. This allowed him to pinpoint the richest pay streaks with surgical precision, ensuring his less seasoned crew was always digging in the right spot. The story of Parker Schnbal is no longer just about how much gold he can find. It's about whether he can build something that truly lasts. The departures of legends like Chris, Mitch, and Gene were not the end of his story. They were chapters in a much longer, more complex narrative about the true cost of ambition and the painful evolution of a leader. What's next for Parker is the biggest question in the gold mining world. Is Parker Schnbal a gold mining genius who makes the tough calls, or a demanding boss destined to push his best people away? Let us know your thoughts. Like and subscribe for more.